Okay, can you guys see my screen? Okay. So Celestia and I had the opportunity to attend the Utah Front Conference, and this was my first year attending. Celestia is going to speak to all the years that she's attended, and overall, it was a great conference. I'm going to reiterate our little blurb for this presentation. The conference showcased, international industry peers. It focused on impactful solutions to real world challenges. That's the benefit of it being a case study conference. And we'll be sharing a few highlighted case studies that address deep organizational questions, how to validate that we're solving the right problems in the right ways. I did correct the typo that this was product managers, not project managers earlier. So this is why we went, to listen to our peers and leaders, to connect and network and learn hard and soft skills to be more competitive in this tech industry, and as well to see some opportunities where we could contribute and present next year. So I'm going to let Celestia speak to this part since she's been before. If you don't mind, Celestia, you want to jump in?
Yeah, thanks, Jared. All right, so what is the Front UX and Product Management Case Study Conference and Workshop Series? So the Front does 2 conferences a year. They do a case study conference in the spring, and they do a workshop series in the fall. The one that we just attended is the spring one, which is case studies. So it's a conference that, shares ideas around UX and product management. It initially started as more UX focused, and they've really integrated that UX and product management concept for the last several years now. The conference started in 2013. It's been around for about 10 years. This past year, so these numbers are from the 2022 conference from last year. I haven't seen the stats for the current one yet, but there were around just over 400 attendees from 4 countries and 23 states. In 2019, pre-COVID, those numbers were doubled. It was over 800 attendees, over 8 countries. So it was a little bit smaller last year and again this past year. But hopefully things will normalize and the conference will continue to grow and get larger over time. Again, it is focused on user experience, product management, research, and leadership. One of the nice things about the conference is that it does focus on the case studies. So it's real world examples of things that people have experienced through their careers. And so there are a lot of things that people bring up that are really helpful and useful to then listen to and be able to reapply to something that you're dealing with or a project that you're on. And so that's really one of the key benefits, I think, of attending this conference. You can see here attendees. Oh, go back. You can go back. So don't want to skim over Jared's visuals here too much, but the attendees by job title. So it is about 21% designers, about 45% product managers, and then several others throughout, engineers, executives, and others. And then you can see some of the different states there in that diagram. All right. So we're going to go over some of the highlights. There were 8 presentations. They did 4 case studies per day for over 2 days. So we are going to highlight the, actually, is that right? Or were there more than that? Maybe there were more than that. But anyway, we're going to highlight the ones that we felt we got the most out of during this conference. So we'll start with Sean Johnson. He talked about discovery and platforms. Then we'll talk about Lauren Treasure's presentation on chatbooks. Then Nate Baldwin, color and contrast accessibility. Mitch Clements, simple nexus. And then Brian Christensen's USANA. We will also maybe talk about a few things not to do, because in every conference, there's lots of things to do. Sometimes there's things maybe to take away not to do in the future. And then we'll summarize and open it up for Q&A. So go ahead, Jared.
Okay. So Sean Johnson is the global VP of product and design at Discovery and Discovery Go. He probably should have been the last speaker. I mean, it was a great keynote. And we'll talk about why he should have gone last when we get to the last. But this particular product that they had to design for Discovery, it was their subscription app. It would attend to 25 million active subscribers. They had 15 brands, 13 territories. This was a gigantic project. 250,000 art files. So in the jumping into this project, they had a number of people on their team, and I show this list simply to say this is who is on their team. However, who is missing out of this list? And that's a trick question. It's the customer. They were not listed, right? And so they had to kind of back up and realize that their process needed to include their customers in the cycle, what their user needs were, what the research validated that their users were looking for, and why their users would have found this new platform valuable. So in their process, they realized they needed adaptability, they needed intuition and instinct. And a lot of this seems kind of like high level, generic terms, but they had to start high level in order to get into the trenches first, especially on a big scale project like this. They had 6 months to put this entire app together for US launch. Which is extremely aggressive, given the scope. One of the insights here, and this was a recurring theme throughout all the front presentations, was empathy and emotional narratives are your two greatest superpowers to create product experiences that connect deeply with people. And this is going to come up again when Celestia presents on Treasure's Chatbooks case study as well. So this was an interesting shift. Instead of focusing on a minimum viable product, their shift went to what is the most lovable product? What's going to get people to engage in this piece, on a constant basis, similar to how we constantly engage with Amazon or Netflix or other media outlets, even our mobile apps, TikTok or whatever. So this was important because it focuses deeply on the customer. It drives value and differentiation. Everyone can rally around and love. So this approach, moving to a most lovable product, reframed the conversation to just shipping a product to creating real value for real people they're going to use on a long-term basis. It creates a habit of them using it. So their framework aligned shared goals and purpose across teams to increase collaboration, velocity, and scale, while celebrating our customers as the heart and soul of the product throughout every touch point, surface, and interaction of the experience. These were 5 core principles that they adhered to: customer obsessed, global mindset, highly personalized, empowered, and best in class. They wanted something that would compete adequately with other media outlets that Discovery felt like they were behind the 8 ball in coming to the market with an app to do. So they were taking a lot of what other media competitors had learned and cut their teeth on in order to make something that was best in class for them. This was kind of a funny piece to this, these other takeaways. They wanted to know their customers. Those were their heroes. They wanted to understand their customers' needs. And then finally, they wanted to say no to distractions. This slide was kind of funny with the dog from, I can't remember the movie, but the squirrel, it was the talking dog with the, it was Up. Yeah, the movie Up. Anyway. Okay, here we go.
All right, thanks, Jared. All right, so I'm going to share some key takeaways from this presentation by Lauren Treasure. The title was Subscribe to a Better Version of Yourself, Why Customers Pay for Aspirational Products. Formerly, she was the Chief Product Officer at Chatbook. She's currently the CEO and co-founder at Hyga. Hyga or Hyga, I don't know. I still don't know how to pronounce that correctly. So when they were kicking this product launch off and doing this evaluation, they were trying to figure out, what the customer problem is. And they just determined an existing problem validated by a customer that is not tied to a solution is based on need. They want to appeal to who they currently are. The research that they did on this when they were starting out was looking at a strong aspiration creates customer brand attachment, behavioral intention, and commitment. The study documented that a variety of aspirations like the status, success, achievement determine consumers' attachment toward brands through representing one's ideal future self. So this one really is looking at people having this attachment through their future self. So they're kind of looking at people, how they currently see themselves and how they see themselves in the future, and how those two different selves apply to the customer journey. So the outcome is not just a product. The product is what they are getting. The outcome is who or what they will become by using the product. Aspiration influences the customer journey across every touch point. So this was their flow that their design flow that they used when they were going through preparation here. So they started with discovery, consideration, purchase, and engagement. Jared, what's the name of that flow again? I'm like drawing a blank.
I'm unmuting myself. I don't remember what she called it, but
we were just talking about it too. Okay, that's fine. Okay, thank you. So during this case study, these are the discovery phase responses that they got back. Basically, what are the aspirations of their customers? And those responses came back, I want my family to feel more connected, and I want to feel like I'm a good parent. So they took these responses from that discovery, and then they started working on validation. So they partnered with developmental psychologists on a large study to understand the impact of printed photos on family relationships. They surveyed 15,591 families while they were doing this validation. What they found was that families connect more when they're looking at printed photos. 76% of those surveyed agreed that printed photos helped the family to connect in ways that they wouldn't normally with digital photos. So the result, when they were able to implement changes based off of this data that they gathered, was an 85% retention rate with top decile consumer retention. Sorry, I'm like reading the slide here, stumbling over my words. Okay, so then they had a 68% print rate. So most customers print their books within a month. And they had a 76% satisfaction with very high customer satisfaction as a result of the updates that they made by changing the focus. The bonus, when customers still subscribe to the service and the aspiration, even when they aren't using it. So this was a really powerful quote. They had a quote from this individual that said, "I'm about a year behind. Our world has been a little crazy. I still pay for them because I want them." It's really interesting. There's people who are still paying for the subscription, even though they're not using it, because it helps them feel like a good parent. It helps them feel good about themselves. It helps them meet these aspirational goals, knowing that they've signed up for the subscription Even when they're not using it, it still gives them a sense of satisfaction by paying for that subscription and knowing that they have it.
Okay, I'm going to jump into color and contrast, but I just wanted to make a comment here on this last piece. This was really impactful for Celestia and I.
Yeah.
You know you've designed a really good product when people are going to subscribe and pay for it and never use it, even up to like a year out. They're still going to subscribe, and they're still not using it. Just the idea that they might use it was pretty impactful. Okay,
Yes.
the next piece is on Nate Baldwin, and I presented a little bit of this in the Dev Center a few weeks ago as a demo. I'm going to get into some more details today. He's the principal product designer at Intuit. He was at Adobe, and he's a specialist in color and contrast accessibility interfaces. And his presentation was very impactful from a research standpoint and from the solutions that he has created that are now open source and free for other designers like myself to be able to access and utilize as we're designing interfaces for our clients that need to be compliant with accessibility standards. So he went in to say that contrast is not physical, it's perceptual. There's negative contrast and there's positive contrast. And today, in a lot of our interfaces that we're designing, we have light themes and we have dark themes. And we're going to kind of get into that in a minute. And some people's their contrast preferences, we need to allow for our clients to be able to choose what type of a theme is easier on their eyes. So contrast is a function of spatial frequency. He showed this slide where you can see where normal vision is able to perceive the differentiation of blurred lines in this particular slide. Those with multiple sclerosis or cataracts, and these are just two examples of people with different types of visual impairment, how that affects their ability to notice contrast spatial frequencies in an interface. So accessible colors adapt to meet people's unique needs. He developed a platform called Leonardo, and this is what it does. It allows a designer to create a color palette within a design system for a client that can be adapted across multiple types of interface themes. So here we see a light theme, a medium, and a dark theme. He went on to say that color analysis needs to be objective. And so the delta E on color contrast, as you can see, most people would consider green and red on the opposite sides of a color wheel, right? They're called, I'm losing the word here, they're complementary, okay? They're opposites, right? And this delta E on a formula is equal to 70. That means that they're 70 indicates the opposite contrast nature of those two colors. However, if you have a visual of any type of a visual impairment, like color blindness, you may not be able to see that 70. And so within this platform, you can see that if you have deuteranopia or protanopia or tritanopia, you can see how red and green with these particular foreground background colors don't meet the delta E. They don't have enough contrast for a user. You can see how someone with deuteranopia would see red and green. Okay, they're too close. So it's an unsafe match to use those particular colors. Without a tool like this, designers would find it difficult to know if the color palette that they're initiating, either on a brand scale or on a design system scale, is going to be adequate for meeting accessibility guidelines and being in compliance. So here's a typical color palette within a design system: 15 color combinations, times 5 formulas times 6 color themes, you're dealing with a gigantic number of calculations on any given typical color palette within a design system. So he created this little button right up here, cycle safe color options. This allowed a designer to set the colors that they're choosing for the design system or the brand, and then you run this little cycle safe color options, and it will find the most the safest color contrasting color schemes, and then optimize those color schemes to the optimal palette, and it'll do this within like an hour. It's pretty remarkable. The last piece that I'll touch on is that he also started a site called colorandcontrast.com. This is a site that we as designers or product managers can use to learn about the physiology of the eye, color vision, and visual acuity to take into consideration for the users that we're designing for.
Great, thanks, Jared. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about this presentation by Mitch Clements. He talked about the business value of design. He was a product design leader at Simple Nexus. So the challenge that they had a product, and the product was to help clients through the home buying journey. Now, overall, the home buying journey is really complicated in itself. So they started looking at their return on investment. So they brought up this quote from Forbes that every dollar invested in UX brings $100 in return. That's an ROI of a whopping 9,900%. This was from The Good UX is Good Business, How to Reap Its Benefits in 2015. So they started looking at their flows, and they were really complicated. And one of the issues that they had was they didn't involve UX. This was a startup. They had a concept, they had engineers, they just started building this thing. And it started becoming very apparent that there were a lot of redundancies, that there were a lot of really complex flows, a lot of things were a little disjointed. And so they started advocating for doing a UX audit and really evaluating where some of the issues were stemming from. They weren't getting any traction. So what they did was printed all of the flows out and then posted it on this wall in the break room where people were walking by it regularly. And it generated some conversations of people saying, oh, what is this? That's interesting. Oh, there's a lot here. By putting it on the paper, it gave people that visual. They still weren't making a lot of progress. So he started this UX audit anyway, started looking at the designs, and he did this screenshot and shared it in a leadership meeting. They had over 50 different styles of buttons in this one app. 50. So he went through and did this
too, right?
What was that?
Completely different buttons. You can see
Yeah.
They're completely styled differently, different typefaces, different sizes, all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, thank you for clarifying. Yeah, not just different buttons, but 50 different styles of buttons throughout. So just that consistency and that complexity alone is really impactful. And this visual was very impactful in that conference at looking at what those users were dealing with by using their tool, which was supposed to be simplifying the process. So some of the business impact consequences here from their sales team, they lost millions in revenue opportunities lost because of the look and feel of the product. He did have the exact number, though he said he wasn't able to share it with us. So he put X million, even though he did know the number, but it was in the millions of dollars that was lost. They found that 30 to 50% of all support calls were stemming from usability issues. And 20 to 30% of the front-end work was redundant, accruing unnecessary tech debt for the dev team. So they did some research. They interviewed 117 homebuyers to see their journey map. And this top graph showed what they found. It starts out good, it takes some dips, kind of gets better, dips again, and then in the end, it's good. So it starts good, the middle's good, the end's good, but the flow in between got really complicated. So they developed this vision map that took 9 touch points of the system, key areas of the system, and identified, focusing on those that had the lowest UX impact, and tried to bring those up to increase the usability of the system. So they prioritized that development by the items that needed the most attention. They also changed from a database model to a user model in the process of doing this, and found that that really helped in the implementation. So overall, through all these optimizations, they were able to create a better user experience. You can see on the left here, very simple flows and data elements, very kind of engineering focused, simplified view. And then the one on the right is what they were able to implement through all of this research and to provide a better user experience. It's much more engaging, visually appealing. And so, yeah, next slide. Yeah. So after bringing this through user testing, reviewing it with potential users, everybody was really, really excited. That user feedback, it was amazing. This would be awesome. They can't wait till it starts. Can't wait to see it in action. It's beautiful, looks good. So they went from having this 30 to 50% of their issues being about usability to people who were involved in the user testing who couldn't wait for this product to be launched and engage with it. So their post-launch results, they were able to have a simplified design, implement a simplified design system. They grew to 300 plus employees. They involved in 1 in 7 mortgage loan closes through using this app. That a 9.3 times task speed and increase, and 72 net promoter score on 5.8 million homebuyers. In the end, Encino acquired Simple Nexus for $1.2 billion based off of the research and implementation of best standards.
Thanks, Celestia. The last piece that we want to cover, it was from Brian Christensen. He talked about building the right thing even when you're told no. He's the lead product designer at USANA. The problem that they were incurring was they had a 20-year-old monolithic code base that was full of deprecated code, varying versions of the same code. It all led to multiple constraints, making upgrading difficult, if not impossible. On top of this was the backlog of items, both for the team and the company, making this a very hard feat. The spaghetti code visual here says it all. It was Christmas lights in a wad. So this was the problem that Brian walked into at USANA when he first started. The problem then got worse because USANA launched a new compensation piece right when he started, and it didn't go well. Besides the constant hot fixes, he faced with a litany of other requests, all with the phrase, well, your team has always done this in the past. So he had to figure out how to fix this and fix it fast, given the fact that it was getting worse. So he proposed a solution, and the response that he got was a resounding no. We still want to do this, but we just have too many other items to do before we can do this. And he had to make a decision from this no to go back to his team and tell them, hey, we're a go. He told his team, yes, we're going to do this. We're just going to have certain rules we have to follow while we're working on this new version, this new solution. So that led to kind of the Fight Club. The new rule of the game is you don't talk about it. They had to do it in secret. They needed to work on all the priority projects first, and then they could work on the tickets for the new service, the new solution. And these helped his team buy into the goal of what we were trying to accomplish, and they became really invested in the process. That also meant that they had to get very efficient at working on the existing work while working on the new piece. So the new hero emerged. Eventually, they had to disclose the secret that they were working on this new project, and when they did, after showing research on how this was going to help, they garnered research on how the new platform would replace the old one and how it would perform better. Then everyone was on board, and everyone became a proponent of the new solution. But the other work never stopped. They still had to work on all the other old problems too. So where their new superpowers had to now solve old problems. And this was a really interesting slide for me. Shortly into building out the new service, they ran into this dilemma where in rewriting the code, they started to find places where the current code was not making accurate calculations. They were faced with a decision. Do we leave old code the way it was, making inaccurate calculations, and just fix the new code in the service, or do we fix both? No, there's a parallel to this that Celestia and I discussed earlier in when we worked on a prior project, a fintech project. I'll probably say, I'm going to say it will remain nameless, okay, just to be safe, Celestia. We worked on this other project where one of our colleagues who happened to have a lot of experience in forensic accounting, we discovered the same kind of issue in working on that project, that their calculations there were some inaccuracies. And we brought this to their attention, and we were not met with, hey, the hero response, thanks for finding this error for us. Wow, can you fix it? No, it was the opposite. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. And we had to pivot as a result of that. And it changed the working relationship with his client. So here's the takeaways. If he would have taken no as an answer, he would not have been able to have built a trust with the executives that he had the best interest for the users and for the product that they were delivering to those users at USANA. That's my main takeaway as far as what Brian had to say as far as this USANA product. And now Celestia, you can unmute. We're going to talk about what not to do. Do you want to start?
You can go ahead and start this one off.
Okay, so this is a sample of some slides from a presenter who will also remain nameless. We don't want to embarrass this person if anyone happens to know this person. These are a sample of some of the very complicated slides that this particular presenter presented. As you can see, it's unnecessary. So we're going to go into why this is what not to do. I want you guys to get a good look at how complicated, not just complicated, like there's alignment issues, there's flow issues, there's actually some spelling errors, and so forth. It's just a debacle. Now,
yeah, and each of these blocks could be its own slide could and should be its own slide independently. If you look, you can see there's kind of frames within each of them, about 3 across and 3 down in this grid of, this should be 9 separate slides, and each of those slides would take quite a bit of explanation just to understand what's happening. Instead, he's got all 9 of them mashed on one page, which really overcomplicates it. You can't really get to that level of detail of understanding what he's trying to portray by looking at this. And if this was just one slide that looked like this, as perhaps an example like the one Jared showed earlier where it said, here's all the team, all the people who were on this, we're not going to talk about that. Here's the point, is that they forgot the customer. That would be one thing. But in this presentation, the slides were like this, slide over slide. And so there was just so much content. It was really good content too, but it was really difficult to really get that scope narrowed in on what it was that he wanted.
So here's what not to do. Here's a summary of what not to do. Avoid excessive slides. Okay, this particular presenter had 81 slides in the deck for a 30-minute, 25-minute presentation time. So this is where simplification, less is more, is beneficial. Avoid positioning yourself as a subject matter expert before violating all the principles that make a subject matter expert. He actually wrote a book. This person wrote a book on UX, and then his slides violated all of the principles and elements of being a UX designer. I found that both ironic and hypocritical. So avoid presenting like a pressured sales pitch ad. He had videos in there that just came across very like, hey, buy this product. It was a turnoff. Avoid overwhelming your audience with overly complicated content layouts, unless complicated is the problem you're solving. In this case, complicated was not the problem he was solving. Complicated was what he was showing. And it made it difficult to follow from one slide to the next. Avoid spelling and alignment and flow errors. Consider proofreading. He could have benefited from that. Avoid going over time. He had, again, 25 minutes, and then there would have been QA. He went over an hour and 10 minutes on his presentation. And he was the last speaker, and it just left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, trying to leave, on a high note, from this great conference. So this is what not to do. And we will definitely take that to heart as we go plan for the next one. Celestia, why don't you dive into how we're going to apply this?
Sure. So overall, this slide is kind of summarizing key takeaways from each of the different presentations. In the first one of the main takeaways was considering the most lovable product mindset, and applying that in our work here, just really keeping that delight. I think it's a little bit of an overused term, but really looking at our customer's perspective and what will be the best for them. Keep asking why. So that chatbook presentation, when they were, they had customers who were paying for a subscription just because it made them feel good about themselves. One of the things, and I actually didn't even go into that part of my notes on that one, is they kept asking why. And even in their research, they, kind of like this toddler mindset, they would ask why 7 times in a row. Okay, why? Okay, why do you, how does this make you feel? Okay, why? And then why does it make you feel? Okay, and why? And so they would just keep asking those whys, and that really helps them create a successful product. In the product and BA space, that also is really helpful when we are gathering requirements from customers, and in the user experience discovery as well, just really asking those whys and understanding our customers at a much deeper level. We then talked about that color and contrast and how accessibility is for everyone. It can be easily overlooked, but there are such simple things that can be implemented that really don't take that much time or effort if you just have that awareness and think about accessibility from the start. Research your customers, understand what they want, what they love, and how to really implement that to create really good usability and usable products. And then building allies and enthusiasts. If you are met with pushback from your client, your team, others, but you really feel confident, you know that there's a right way or something that really should be implemented, remember to, try to find allies, try to find enthusiasts, try to help other people rally with you to help understand and communicate your vision. And then advocate for your users' best interests. If you know what's in the best interest of your users, continue to advocate for that and find other ways to be able to help get people to understand why it's important. And then our plans for next year. So Jared and I have talked about presenting next year on a case study in this conference, or maybe putting our hat in the ring for that. So we have this fintech project, as mentioned, that could be a case study. There are a lot of things that went wrong with that project, which sometimes when things go wrong, we learn the most from those. And so there's a lot of takeaways and a lot of things, recommendations on things to do, but also a lot of things, lessons learned of things not to do, and how you take those lessons learned and apply them going forward in the future. And then we definitely want to promote Front for other STGers to attend in the future. In past years, we've had large groups of people go to Front together. The last couple of years, those numbers have been pretty small. So next year, we really want to be able to promote STG attendance at this conference. We really think there's a lot of benefit for people to attend. There are a lot of things that can be taken away from this and really applied in the real world in your projects.
Thanks, guys. We'd like to open this up to Q&A if anyone has any questions or comments.
Any questions? Anybody have any questions? I know Tressa also attended. She actually volunteers with Front. Tressa, do you have any thoughts or takeaways from your experience at Front this year or in the past?
One of the things that is really cool about Front is that you do get to talk with these speakers. I spent quite a bit of time with Sean Johnson at the Wednesday night reception and had really good conversation with him. That list of people that you talked about that were on the team, he talks about that there's 3 people you need to get buy-in from your company. And so it was interesting because one of those that's not on the list there, he talks about the executives there, but the 3 people that he says you have to have in the room is your finance guy, your legal guy, and your EA. And I said, EA, he said the executive assistants, because they run everything. And if you want to get things done, you've got to get the EA in the room. And so that was really fascinating with the level that he's working at, to talk about that those are the 3 people that if you get buy-in from on the project, everybody else will come along. And I thought that was an interesting piece of information that you pick up outside of necessarily just the speaking presentations, but you get to actually talk with these people and you can ask them questions. I know Jared talked with one of the speakers, Nancy, and they're very open to giving you feedback and answering questions and connecting outside of the conference. And the thing that is so cool about Front, and it may just be the space of product managers and UX people, but there's a feeling that there's enough work for everybody. Nobody feels competitive towards each other, and they're willing to share their information and understanding. And so I think that that's kind of a really cool takeaway about working with the people at Front, is that if you have a question and you go in there with a question because you're struggling with something that's happening in your particular project or workspace, they are ready and willing and able to help you brainstorm for solutions and give you advice. So
thanks, Tressa.
I think it's worth it.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, Neil.
I'll ask a question that I already know the answer to because I want everyone to hear the answer. Can you watch videos of the presenters online anywhere?
Wow, what a fabulous question, Neil. As a matter of fact, you can.
Oh, sorry.
It wasn't a
I'm a
plant.
plant. Yes, I am.
Good one. So yes, the videos are actually available on YouTube from all of these presenters. And so if you're interested in any of these, you can go and look those up on YouTube. They did share the slides for those who attended. So Jared and I do have copies of the slides. So if you watch one of the videos or you're interested in more on any of these that we talked about, or if you find any that we weren't able to focus on today and you'd like to learn more, we'd be happy to share some of that information with you.
Mm-hmm.
One more question for you. Oh, sorry, I saw Tressa was going to say something. Go ahead, Tressa.
I was just going to say Nancy's presentation may have some language that's not suitable for work.
Oh yeah, good point, Tressa.
Wade usually tells them to keep it PG. Sometimes they forget. Yeah. The question I had was, based on what you learned at the conference, how would you sell UX services to a client that is either unfamiliar with them or not sold on the value of UX?
Great, Jared. I think that's a question for you.
How would I sell the value of UX to a customer who's did I
Yes.
restate that? Well, it's helpful to rely on the research, to me, because it's objective, it's quantifiable, it's measurable, and if people, particularly CEOs or other design leads at some of our clients' shops, if they are open to understanding what the research says, and not, they don't have to take our opinion for it. They don't have to believe us at all. They can just look to what the data is saying. And particularly when you look at some of these quotes that our colleagues have mentioned. Who was that one about? Yeah, right here. Every dollar invested. This is Forbes. Like, who's going to argue with Forbes? And this was 8 years ago. Like, I'm sure that this dollar invested in UX is even higher than that now. Okay. So to the benefit of seeing case study pieces like this, and even some of the ones that we didn't have time to share, were very research driven. They let the research speak for itself, and they interview the users. And if companies are willing to make products that their users are going to engage with, then they have to know what their users want. And the only way to do that is through us, because we know what we're doing. We're not only adept at doing the research to find out the data and make informed design decisions that validate that data, but we're also meeting accessibility standards in compliance. We're designing to UX best practice guidelines that are proven. So anyway, I hope that answered the question. I can soapbox that all day.
Yeah, it feels like that. Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, it feels like I could go to that one talk and get a whole bunch of stuff out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that one of the things Jared kind of is like circling around is the way that we sell UX is to be able to actually give a presentation that shows what the ROI is going to be. I mean, that's what this quote is. But when it comes to getting your executive team on board, it is really about the bottom line for them. They are looking for, how is this going to affect our bottom line? If we're spending all this money on doing this research, what do we get out of it? And is there, can you give me an idea of how this is going to improve our bottom line? And that's where I think people end up missing things, is that they don't actually apply it to the business side of it, to be able to give them how this is going to improve their business and therefore their numbers.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I also think that one of the elements here is just helping to define the role and helping our clients understand that UX is not just a designer who's designing a screen to make it look pretty. Really focusing in on helping them understand, here is what this role is going to be doing and defining the benefit of that role, and especially reiterating that UX research element. It's not just creating a pretty picture, it's doing that research, doing that analysis. And one of the great benefits of having someone from UX involved end to end, from beginning to end of a project, is also them gathering the right metrics and data that can then circle back in the end and be able to show those numbers of that NPR, of showing those numbers of the time to task, of the metrics, of the ROI. And sometimes when UX isn't involved in that full loop, some of those things get missed. And so I think it's something that, helping our customers and our clients understand what the benefit of UX is, but also what they bring to the table and what they provide and why it's important to have involved in the process.
I just wanted to hear you brag about UI and UX. That's why I asked the question.
Thanks, Neil.
I have another question, but I want to cede my time to anyone else who has questions.
I'm not sure if this is a question so much as a comment, but one of the questions I had in mind is, I remember a few years ago reading about Apple's reasoning for putting the menus of a program on the top of the screen, and the idea was that the five easiest places to access on the screen are the four corners and the cursor. But the funny thing was that I was reading about this on an Apple laptop, but it was connected to a giant curved screen that would probably be the equivalent of two I can't remember the resolution, but two high resolution screens put together. Mm-hmm. And so if I had a little program in the lower right hand corner, I'd have to go all the way up to the literally 3 or 4 feet all the way up to the upper left hand corner to access the menu. Mm-hmm. And so the idea of having something like UI, the UI audits conducted fairly periodically resonates with me. And in Apple's defense, I could see where they're coming from, because back when they were making those guidelines, the screen was literally the size of a postcard. Mm. And even if you're talking about a 13-inch screen, it's not terribly huge.
Yeah, a lot's been learned over the years since Apple's first launched the first iPhone, and Alpheus, one of those evolutions has been the idea of thumb reach menu items. So yeah, we might see all of the little apps that you have on a screen, but as people kind of adapt to using things to hold their phone, and most of what they're doing, unless they're texting with 2 fingers, is with their thumb. Now the menus are going from the top down to the bottom, where users can now engage with them with one hand on their thumb or within thumb reach. That's one of the heuristic type things that evolutions that's been adapting. Thanks for your comment, though.
I think it's a good example too of the difference between UI and UX, right? So on the UI, it makes sense to have something in a certain position, but understanding the user experience and how that user is going to interact with that item really makes a difference of that placement.
Any other questions?
Well, so I have kind of an obnoxious one, not that that's going to surprise most of you who know me. So can we apply these principles to our timesheet?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we have some alignment issues on the timesheet, right? You notice like what you post on your time and what the PTO is, all those days are like shifted off. Yeah. Don't get me started, Drew. Okay. I'm with you. We definitely need to make some optimizations.
Yeah, that is actively being addressed and looked at. So. All right. Any other thoughts or questions? We just have a couple minutes left.
The one that I was going to ask was just what was said at the conference, if anything, about the application of AI technology to UX UI.
Yeah, there was a presenter on UI. AI, sorry. He actually worked with ChatGPT, and I'm trying to find his talk right now, but give me a second to try and find that.
One of the things he did say was that AI is not going to replace us,
Oh, that's
but
good.
that you have to learn how to utilize it. It's the person that's got the strategy. I mean, I'm being really like the overall here, but the idea is that there's you have to understand the strategy and how it works, and how you can utilize it.
Yeah, his if you guys are interested in the Dropbox slide presentations, his presentation was right. His name was Nate Saunders, and I'm seeing Nate Baldwin's. I'm not sure where his went. It's not listed here. I'll have to find it. But it was on building products in an AI first world, data visualization, stochastic AI, and even the move into chat, or what's GP4, which is the fourth version of ChatGPT. But like Tressa said, it's so far out. I mean, it is making huge advances, but there's a lot of what we do as UXers that are manual processes that would be very complicated and difficult for AI to try to replace at this juncture. But I'll see if I can find his. I'm not sure why it's not listed here.
Yeah, thank you. I noticed Shannon just put a link in the chat for anybody interested in a little more.
We are at an hour, and we want to keep to time. We appreciate everyone listening in, and hope this was helpful for everybody. And we look forward to having as many of you that are interested in attending next year's front.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.